everybody, and welcome back to another podcast of the Board Game Specialist. I am Melanie.
And I'm Carla.
And how do we give ourselves the title?
We just give ourselves the name.
I guess so, right? We just do. So on this show, we're going to be doing our top 9 small card games. But before we get into that, let's kind of have a quick recap of how the week went. So Carla, what did you play this past week?
Well, before I get into what I played, I just wanted to say there was one mistake I made last episode. I was talking about a game called Paperback, but I actually said Paper Tales. It was a deck building.
Either, so I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, it was a deck building letter game, word game, and I don't know why I said Paper Tales. It's not even a game I enjoy. I called that game, but it was Paperback. That was the one I was talking about. But anyway, back to the games I've been playing. A couple of my favorites this week. One was called The Magnificent. So it's a magician-themed game using polyominoes, cards, and dice. 3 of my favorite things. It's an awesome game. Have you played it, Melanie?
No, actually, I haven't.
No, it's really good. Yeah.
It sounds good.
Yeah, you have a little tableau in front of you where you use your polyomino shapes, and those will cover up bonuses that will give you, money, cards, more little helpers that you can use when you're doing your performances. The card play is, they're also in front of you in a tableau, and you'll choose dice to place on them, and that'll be your movement for that round. And you also get a bonus every time you put a dice on that card. And then you can do one of, I think, 5 different actions: build, travel, or perform. And then there's a couple little ones too. But the little workers will enhance your actions. So it's over 3 rounds, but you'll have 5 turns each round. Doesn't sound like a lot, but you can do a lot in each one. It's really a neat game.
Good.
Yeah.
Nice.
What about you? That was one of mine, but tell me about one of yours.
I haven't played tons and tons last week so far. We did do, on Wednesday, we had the kids over, so I kind of had everybody sit down and spend some time. So we actually played Century Spice Road. I have all 3 games in the Century trilogy: the Spice Road, the Eastern Wonders, and the, I forget what the last one is called now. But so Spice Road is probably the one that I've played the least. And it's the deck building version, and we ended up playing it with the kids, and they enjoyed it okay. It was good. Also, I had a slight misfortune this week and managed to snip off the tip of my finger, so I decided to make me feel better. I would buy some board games, so I ended up buying 9
Yes, you deserved it. I seen the pictures.
Exactly. So we ended up playing Quirkle out of that batch, which I had never played before. And it's kind of interesting. It's like Scrabble, but with shapes and colors. Yeah. So we played that for the first time. It was pretty neat. I'll be playing more games this afternoon, but we just haven't got to that yet. So yeah, it was kind of a quiet week on the board game side for me, but. Mm-hmm.
Well, talking about Century Spice, then the third one is called Century: A New World. Have you played it yet?
Yes, I have. Actually, I've played A New World a few times. It's neat. I like because it's more like a worker placement. Yeah. The only thing with that game is how tiny are those little meeples in that
They are small.
It's ridiculous. That took me by surprise. It's like, oh my God, could they make them any smaller?
I know, they're very small.
My favorite out of that trilogy definitely is The New World, which is more like which is more an area control, which is funny because I keep saying area control is not a mechanism I love, but apparently I do.
Yeah, it's fun. Have you combined any of them?
No, I want to. I'm really excited. That's why I wanted to get all 3. So I have all 3 now, and I just need to try combining it.
Yeah, my favorite combination is the first one and New World together.
Oh yeah,
that's my favorite combination. It's pretty.
Have you done all the combinations?
No, I've played the second one alone. It's not. Yeah. It's my least favorite probably of the 3.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, but maybe because it's area control. I don't know.
Maybe. Maybe. Yeah. All right. Well, shall we get into our top 9?
Sure.
So first, I'll talk a little bit on how I went about picking my top 9. So what I did is I like to use pub meeples, which is great because I find I'm just as surprised as everybody as what's going to make it on my list. But it does take a long time doing all those comparisons. So what I do is I open up the games I bought, and I was just kind of picking all the games that were small card games, because our list is for small card games, and we figured if it fit in a coat pocket, that's the size we're looking at.
Yes.
And then I did my whole list, and I was all excited, and then I had to take 2 out because when I got looking at them, they wouldn't fit in a coat pocket.
That was exactly what happened to me too. 2 of them didn't fit the bill.
Yeah, there was 2 as well for me that I took out. That was Silver and Gold for me, and Sherlock 13. The box is just a little bit too big. Which were the 2 that you cut out of your list?
I had to cut out, well, one I'm going to save for next week because it's in our next week's game. But another one was Guillotine. Have you ever played that?
Yes. Yes, I have. But yeah, it is a long, narrow box because of that guillotine paper thing, right?
It's
which, honestly, you don't really need for the game.
No, you don't.
It would work. It's like Sherlock 13. There's 13 cards. It's cards, but they've also put little shields you can play behind, like to hide behind. So
you need a bigger box.
Having that in place made the box a little too big, right?
Yeah. Well, and the guillotine that is in the box, like you think you don't really need it, but when you have to switch sides for which way, it does help. I mean, you could use anything, I guess, but
it could have been a card as well and keep it small, but it is kind of neat to have that little standing guillotine at the end for sure.
Yeah, I'll talk about that in another episode.
There you go. Sounds good. All right, well, let's get started. So I'll start if that's okay.
Yeah. Perfect. Do you have any honorable mentions or anything that didn't quite...
You know what? I was looking at my list, and I've got my top 9 now. And then I was looking at the other games that didn't quite. There's so many good ones.
Yes,
so I'm going to save them because I think we need to do the next 9. There's too many good ones not to. So we'll, at a later episode, I think we should do the next 9 small card games just because there's so many good ones out there.
Yeah. Well, before you get into your number 9, I just have a little honorable mention just because it's in a weird box, and I don't know that we'll ever kind of cover that. It's a tin, and it's shaped like an artichoke, and it's called Abandon on All Artichokes. Have you ever played it?
I've never played it. I've heard great things. People that have played it seems to really like it.
Yeah, it's fun. I played it one time on BGA and just kind of jumped into it. Thought, this looks easy. I'll play. Well, I had no idea what was going on, so totally lost. And then I did, read the rules, watch a video, and it's very simple. I bought the game. It's fun. It's just a little deck builder, and you start with 10 artichokes, and then you just have to, the way to win is just by the end of your turn when you pick up your new 5 cards, if you have no artichokes in, then you win the game. So there's all kind of vegetables you can pick up that'll help you get rid of them, give them to other players, and whatnot. But it's a simple little fun game. But let's hear your number 9.
Okay, so my number 9, and this one actually is the oldest game I have on my list because it was published in 1998. Now,
you got dates.
Now, when I'm from the 80s, right? So 1998 doesn't sound that far along, but it's actually 24 years old already.
Geez.
And this game is Mamma Mia, and it was a Hugh Rosenberg game, and it was published by Abacus Spiel. But it's so neat. Have you ever played Mamma Mia?
No, I would like to. It's one of my little mini Grail games.
It's so neat because it's a deck of cards, and on those cards, and you play as a different ingredient, right? Like you have the yellow cards or the green card or the red cards and so on. And so if I'm the yellow cards, my main ingredient is going to be pineapple. And the other one is going to be pepperoni, and there's mushrooms, and there's peppers. And what you're doing is you're making pizzas. And you're taking turn putting cards into the middle, which is the oven. And when you think there's enough ingredient to do the order that you have, you would put your order on top of that pile. But the thing is, everybody's adding to the same pile, so you don't know if somebody kind of sneaks in an order. It's like, okay, well, I think there's still enough ingredient to do mine, so you would put yours, or maybe it's like you put more ingredients. So you keep kind of adding on to that, and then at the end of the round, you take this and you take it upside down and you sort the ingredients. And then when an order comes up, you pull those ingredients out. And if there was enough ingredients to fulfill the order, then you score that order. And the order is in your color, so you know if it's yours or not. And then you keep going, and then sometimes like, oh shoot, I forgot you were using so many mushroom, and then another order comes out and there's not enough ingredients to fill. So you do still have the option to supplement with what's in your hand if you've collected enough orders in your hand as ingredients in your hand as well. And if you can't, well, then the order is trashed and you didn't get to score. So it was so neat. The first time I played it, it was so unique. Like, it was interesting because it's a bit of a memory version. Like, you're trying to remember what ingredients been put in the oven and hope that you have enough to fulfill your order. So it was neat. And that's one that we've played at restaurants and stuff, and the kids kind of enjoy it. So it's an easy one to get to the table, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to playing that one.
Well, I know who has it. All right, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is from the same designer, Uwe Rosenberg, Bonanza Duel. Have you ever played it?
Yes, I have.
So it's, if you're familiar with the Bonanza game where you're trading beans, well, this one is just a 2-player game. And so you have a set of beans in front of you, in between both of you, and those will be what you'll trade back and forth. But you have the same kind of deal where you have a hand of cards that you can't arrange. So the one on the right side of your hand is the ones that you can play, like until you play that one, then you can use the next one, but you can't touch the other cards unless you're trading or gifting a card. So you're always planting 1 or 2, and then you pull out 3 cards from the deck and you have to gift one. It doesn't have to be one of those, it can be one from your hand, and that's a way to get it out of your hand. But then you also have these little objectives that you can fulfill to get more points, not just from the beans and harvesting them. So those add kind of a little flavor that I really like.
Yeah. Yeah, I love Bonanza, and then the Duel is so well. They've done such a great implementation for it to work at 2 players and still have that. Really good. Yeah.
Yeah, that one was a 2016 game, so that's not too old, only about 6 years ago.
That's not too bad.
Yeah. What about your number 8?
All right, so for my number 8, I have Coup. And that's a 2012 game by Ricky Tata, and it was printed by Indie Board Games. And what's neat with this one is you have 2 cards in front of you, and there's different roles. And you have kind of like a card that'll tell you what each roles will do. So you have the Duke that allows you to collect more points. So you have the Contesta that allows you to avoid to be assassinated or different things like that. And what's neat is those 2 roles are in front of you, and you know what they are, but other players don't know what they are. So you can actually pretend like, yeah, I'm the Duke, I'm going to take 3 coins this round. And they can be like, and somebody can step in and say, you know what, I don't think you have the Duke, because maybe they have 2 Dukes in their hand. You don't know what they have, right? Now, like, the chances of you having one, or, so they can challenge you or let it slide. But if they challenge you, you have to prove whether you have that character or not. And then if you do, you swap out. And then if they were wrong challenging you, they lose one of their cards. If you were in fact bluffing and you can't, then you lose one of your own cards. And you're trying to go around to be like the last man standing with these 2 cards. And it's a neat one. Like, it's been a fun one. It's been well received. It'll play a fair good amount of players as well. I know we're a family of 6, so we've played it with the kids, and that it's gone over pretty good too.
Well, and that's plays a high player count, doesn't it?
Yeah, it can be. And I don't remember how many it does play, but I know 6 it worked great with all 6 of us.
Neat. I have that game, but I have not played it yet.
Oh, wow.
I bought it very early on, but I've never, I don't know, just never come out, but I would like to try it. So my number 8 is a 2021 game, so fairly new. I have it right here. I'm just going to look at the designer. Thought I had it ready. It's called Enchanted Plumes.
Oh, I've seen pictures. It looks amazing.
Yeah, by Brendan Hansen. It's from Calliope Games. It's a really neat game. So you're just building these peacocks, but you have all different kinds of colors of their feathers, and so you kind of build an opposite pyramid with them to make like a peacock feather. So you try to have small numbers on the top, because the first row are all going to be negative. So the lower the number, the better negative.
Yeah.
And then your next row has to be those colors. So you can only use the colors that you had in the top row. So then you want to try to get higher numbers. And then the next row has to be the colors you used in the second row. So you're kind of limited that way. But how you're choosing cards is you're drafting from like a universal row of cards. So you could either just blindly pull from the deck, or you can trade with this row of cards at the top. And so you can build a big giant peacock or just a bunch of little ones, because if you do finish the peacock with a single one on the bottom, like finishing a reverse pyramid, then you get to double all your points. Or you get an extra one for everyone. So you want to finish as many as you can. But sometimes you end up with a bunch of unfinished or just a bunch of negatives if you started just one row. It's a thinky game, but it's really fun.
It does sound like a neat puzzly game.
Yeah, it's fun. It's very pretty,
that
too.
goes on my wish list now.
Yeah. Oh, darn.
In my ever-growing wish list. It's terrible.
And what about your number 8?
That was your number 8. Perfect. Yeah. So for my number 7, now I would like to point out that we don't know what is on each other's list.
Right.
We've kept it secret from each other, just so it'd be kind of interesting to see what is on each other's list. And number 7 is our first overlap.
Oh.
Yes. So my number 7 is Bonanza, the Duel.
Oh, nice.
Because Bonanza obviously is too big. Such an amazing game that
it is.
The play of not being able to shuffle your cards and having to play the one that's on the front, so the trading is so interesting. And then Bonanza Duel, where they doing it for just 2 players and introducing that offer cards in the middle. It's like, well, I'm offering you this card instead. And you can bluff, right? You can offer something you don't actually have. But then if you get caught, like, you get a bit of a penalty for that.
Yeah, you have to give a coin or something, right?
Yeah, and I thought it was so well made at how they've kind of maintained that negotiation in a 2-player game. Like, so, yeah. So Bonanza the Duel by Hugh Rosenberg, and it's a 2016, as you mentioned, published by Rio Grande Games. So that was my number 7.
Nice. So my number 7 is called Bandita, and I did have the designer. I'll look it up here. It's Martin Nerbengard Anderson. I hope I didn't butcher that name. But it's kind of a sequel to a game called Bandido. Mm-hmm. So it's very similar, but this one just gives you a bit of like player powers if you play a certain card. But what it is these are little bandits that are trying to escape. And your cards are basically just routes that you're building. So they're just all in different kinds of shapes. So you start with Bandita in the middle, and she's like in jail kind of, and then she has about 6 different routes going out from her jail cell that she's going to try and escape, and you're trying to just close them off. And it's a cooperative game, so you can play with up to 4 players, or you can play it alone solo. And so you're just playing cards. You have 3 cards in your hand and you play 1. Some of the cards that you play will make you play your whole hand, or you'll lose cards, or you'll add cards. That's the reason I like this one over Bandido, as it just gives you a little bit more extra things you can do. But you can also combine the 2 games and make it a really huge, difficult one, and because they're both trying to escape. Right. Have you played that one?
You know what? I've heard a lot about it. That one is one that is intriguing me, and I've added it to my cart a few times, and then taking it off.
Yeah. You could try it on BGA. It's a pretty good implementation.
Oh, okay,
there.
yeah. I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, because that way you could see if you like
Perfect.
it. But this is a game that me and one of my gaming partners that we play a lot together, we kind of play this at the end of the night, and we're like, okay, we're just going to have one game. We play one. Okay, another game. And it ends up being 3 or 4 games. It's not easy either. I thought, it's just going to be a little easy game well, no, it's not. It's a tricky one. We've only won it a few times so far.
Oh wow, okay. Wow. Okay, well that sounds interesting. Okay, so then for my number 6, it's a 2015 game by Alexander Fitzer, published by Lookout Game, and that one is Oh My Goods.
Good game.
And Oh My Goods was so neat. Like, you know what's neat with it is each card can be used in different ways. Like, do you want to have the card to build the building that's on it so that you can kind of add that into your engine building, right? Because you're creating all these resources. Or do you want to spend it for the resources that it's worth? Or do you want to, so I really like games that have those multi-use cards. And what's neat with it is you start the game and you're going through the first market and you flip cards that's going to be in the market until you see a little sun icon in one of the cards, and then that's the morning market. So you see what's available resource wise to build in the morning, but then you're going to have, and then you need to decide, okay, are you going to use your worker to be really efficient, or are you going to use your worker to be a little sloppy? So if you don't fully get what you need, you can use one resource less. But then you get a little bit less out of it as well. So you kind of make that decision, and then you go into the evening market and you flip the cards until the little sun icon comes up again, and then that's it for your market. So you never really know what's all going to come out and how it's all going to come together. And yeah, it's just a tiny little card game, but it is, like, it has a big play feel to it, I feel.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so that's one that I enjoyed playing quite a bit. So my number 6 is Oh My Goods.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right, my number 6 is called The Game. There's a few different implementations of this. There's like face-to-face, quick and easy, just the basic one. And all it is, it's a very simple game. You have in the base game, the game, you have 4 rows. 2 go from 0 to 100, and the other 2 rows go from 100 to 0. And so you have a hand of 8 cards, and you're just trying to get rid of all your cards and the whole deck and try and get them on these rows. So you're gonna, try to put your high cards from the 100 to 1 and your low cards from 0 to 100. But the one thing that's nice is if you ever get, if say you're at 50 and you're going from 0 to 100 and you have a 40, you can go back down 10. So you can bring everything back down or back up to kind of reset it a bit, which is nice. And it's a cooperative game, but you can also play it solo. I play this in front of the TV multiple times a day, probably, if I'm watching something. It's just something I can do and not really have to think about it, just like playing like a solitaire.
Right.
But it's really fun. And the face-to-face game, which is just a 2-player version, is really fun too. You can do that. You do the same thing, but you only can play 2 cards, I think it is. And if you can't play on your own, you can play on the other player's pile. It does help them, but it also helps you get rid of cards. So it kind of goes back and forth that way. And then you just go until somebody can't go anymore, basically, or you get rid of all the cards. It's really fun. But such a simple game.
Similar to the Mind, or?
It's the same. I might even be the same. Is it the same designer? No, but it's the same production company. Okay. Same cards, almost. You could use those cards to play the Mind. If you were traveling, you could take the game and use it for the Mind as well.
There you go.
You just have to make something up for the little stars and whatnot. But yeah, so that's my number 6.
Perfect. Number 6. Okay, so for my number 5, I have Hanami. Hanami was published in 2019. It's designed by Stefan Bendorf.
Yeah,
and it's published by Pandasaurus Game.
That's the same designer I just had.
Same designer as which one?
You said Hanami. It's the same designer as the game.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah.
So it's similar to that,
and
too.
And it's neat. When they get a designer get multiple games, like they've got skills. Hanami is very interesting. It's a drafting game. So you've got a hand of cards. Well, you start with 10, and you're going to pick 2. and you add them to your garden. You can have up to 3 different gardens, and then you pass the cards along to the next player. You can play 2 to 4, and what's at 2 is interesting because you kind of have an idea of what's coming back to you. At 4, by the time it comes back to you, you have really no idea what the hand's going to hold, right? And you pick 2 cards to play, and you, as I mentioned, you can build up to 3 gardens, and you're going to score 3 times. So the first round, you're going to score all the blue cards, and they're going to be worth 3 points. So it's worth playing the most blue cards you can in the first round because you actually get to score them 3 times. And in this garden, you add 2 cards. And the rule is you need to maintain numerical order. So if you've got a 10 and a 13 and you get an 11, you can't put that in there because you can only add below or above. And you can't put the 11 after the 13 because you got to maintain numerical order. So you're trying to get cards that are fairly close together, trying to tuck that in. And sometimes you look at the hand, it's like, shoot, this is going to create a big gap. Am I going to lock myself out? And so on. You can discard cards if you don't want to add them to your garden, but then you're losing potential points, right? So it's not ideal. But it's a very neat, puzzly game. And it's just a fun one to play.
Yeah, I love that game too. That was actually my number 10.
Oh, was it? Oh, funny.
Yeah. Good game. Okay, so now my number 5, it's called Mass Transit. And the designers are Chris Leder and Kevin Rogers. It's a 2021 game. Another cooperative game where you start with this little circle in the middle with, I think it's 6 different people who are trying to get home to their rural or urban homes. And so you have 4 different types of transportation. You have like a bus, subway, boat, train, or walking. And you have all these different cards that have those different symbols on them. And so you have to play them, and they branch out those 6 ways. And so you'll play a card, and it'll say, okay, so this person is going to have to move by bus. So first you put the card down that will say that will show a bus route. It might have 2, like a bus route and say a boat route. And then you'll have to play another card that has a boat movement or a bus movement in order to move that little meeple to that spot. So you will have to lay the tracks, and then you have to move them and try to get them all to those 6. It's either 6 or 8 locations. And it's really tricky because sometimes there's cards that have like a little symbol where you have to play those, and you don't want to play them this round because they add and make it longer because each of those branches have to be so long because there's like end cards. So the end card in your hand might say it has to have like 4 cards before it. So you have to make sure you have 4 before you put the last stop where they go. They're home, basically. So it's really another really tricky cooperative one, which you can play solo as well. But it's really fun. Yeah, have you played this one?
I haven't. No,
Nope.
I haven't played that one.
Yeah. It's another one by Calliope Games. It's really good. Yeah.
Sounds great. All right, so for my number 4 game, and this game is interesting. I bought this one secondhand at the Falcon, the flea market they had at the Falcon. And you know what? It was at the end of the day, and it actually bought from the Falcon library itself because they had such a large library and they were kind of getting rid of games that nobody was playing. And this little card game was sitting in there, and I can't even remember if I paid for it, if they just like, here, you take this. So, and it's called 5 Cucumbers. 5 Cucumbers was published in 2013 by Friedman Freeze and published by Stronghold Games. And I took this game home, and I was going to donate it to the Didsbury Museum because they were starting to do game nights. And it's like, well, if you come across any games so we'd have on hand. And I was going to give that to them. And me and my friend Lyle was at one of their game events, and we sat down and said, oh, well, let's try this one. And we opened it up, and it's a tiny little box, and it's cards, and it has little cucumber bits.
Oh, really?
Little
I've never heard of this.
Cucumber bits. And then we open this up, and then I'm looking at Lyle and looking at me, and he's kind of like whispering to me, take this one back. And I'm like, I will. So I ended up keeping it for myself just for the cucumber bits alone. It was so cute. But then it's a trick-taking game. And what's really interesting is there's only one suit, cucumbers.
Oh, really?
And you play 7 rounds. And the first 6 rounds, you don't score. You only score the final round. And you have cards in your hand that go from 1 to 15. And the way you're playing is you'll play a card, and if everybody plays a card, whoever wins that round will collect all the cards and play the next one. So if I play, let's say, an 8, the next person can match me, play an 8 or a higher card. If for any reason they cannot go higher, they have to play the lowest card. And at the end, so you're doing this for the 6th round, and on the 7th round you do it, and then what happens is whoever wins that round has to collect the number of cucumbers they have on their card, because it goes from 1 to 15, but there's images on there. So 1, 2, and 3 might have 1 cucumber, right? Or 2, and then like the middle one would have 2 cucumbers, and then the 15 would actually give you 4 cucumbers. So you would have to collect 4 cucumber bits. If you ever reach 5, you're eliminated from the game, and it's kind of last man standing game. So you keep going around trying not to have the highest card for the last round. But because if somebody plays a 15 and you can't beat a 15, you have to get rid of your lowest card. You're getting to the point where in your hand you might not have low cards. Right? But if you manage to hold on to some really low cards, and in the final round you play a 1, the 1 actually doubles the number of cucumber that the person who wins that round have to collect. So they may end up having to draw twice as many cucumbers as they normally would have to and get eliminated faster, right? It's such a tiny, little, simple game, but it's so much fun. And those little cucumber bits alone just sells the game. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah, for sure it would. I'll have to check that one out.
Mm-hmm.
That was your number 4, right?
That was my number 4, 5 cucumbers.
Well, my number 4 is another crossover. So it's Oh My Goods by Alexander Pfister, one of my favorite designers. And you've already said everything there is to say. But I do love the engine building, the pusher luck, and just the feel of a bigger game in that box. It's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very clever design game for sure.
Yeah. So that's my number 4.
All right. So my number 3 is published in 2016. It's a Wolfgang Kramer game, and it's Vampire Queen. And this is another trick-taking game, and it is amazing. And the artwork is neat because each card is like a Victorian-style vampire. Ooh. Right? So it's all different kind of vampires that you have. And what you do is on your turn you play, and you can play a set of 1, 2 of the same, 3 of the same, or whatever that you want. Like, and I think there's like up to 8 cards of each kind in the game. So you could play up to, you could play, okay, I'm playing 5 number 3s or whatever. And the next person has to go higher, but they have to maintain the number that you've played. So if you played 1, and they have to play 1 higher than what you've played. And then you kind of go around, and then whoever wins that round kind of swipe the cards away and they get to start. And the goal is to get rid of all the cards you have in your hand. And then when somebody does that and clear out their hand, everybody else counts what they have in their hand, and that tallies up in their score. And you're trying to score as little as possible. What's neat with this one, though, is 2 cards are vampire hunters. So you're playing all these cards, playing the game, and then if you have a vampire hunter in your card, you have to play that at the start of the round. And if you play a vampire hunter, everybody has to put a single card in the middle. You're not trying to match up. It's just whoever plays the highest one has to collect all of those cards, and it goes in their hand, including the vampire hunter. The vampire hunters are never discarded. One's worth 15 and one's worth 20. So if you get stuck with them, you're guaranteed having to collect those points, right? So you're trying not to end up with a vampire hunter, and you're trying to keep, like, so when you're playing, but maybe you'll keep like the number 1s and the number 2 cards in case a vampire hunter comes in, so you can play those so you don't end up having to pick up the hand. It's so neat. It is so fun. It's like one of my favorite trick-taking games to play. And like I said, the goal is to score as low as possible. And I suck at this game. It's ridiculous. And I don't know why. But like a high score, like we'll play it and then it's like, oh, wow, they scored 150 points after 5 rounds or whatever. I swear I played one time and I scored almost 600 points. Like, I don't even know how that's possible. It was terrible. I had all the points, but it's such a great game. Such a great game. And that was my number 3, Vampire Queen.
I'll have to check that one out too. This is going to get expensive. Us listing off games we've never heard of.
Right? So they're not too pricey.
That's true. My number 3 is a little game called Peat Mats. It's a little bird game, and it's by Matt Riddle and Ben Pinchback.
Okay.
It's a tableau builder where you're trying to build rows of birds. You don't have to have them in order, but it helps if you can get like certain cards will give you if you have more of one color of a type as opposed to the other person, you'll score that color. Where just like an arboretum, I'm not sure if you played, but
right, yeah.
In order to score them, you have to have more than the other player. But before that, you do get to score if you match little lovebirds. So for each color, there's 2 birds that will kind of are the same and they'll face in the opposite direction. So they're like facing together. Then if you have a set of those, you'll score more. But how you get these cards is really interesting because you have this little perch where you'll send a bird to on one side of it. And then depending what it adds up to with the bird that's already there, that's the card you're going to take above it. So it'll be there's seeds on the top. And then there's also little critters that can like eat, well, not eat your birds, but well, maybe eat your birds or steal your seeds. And sometimes you're forced to take these cards. And so they can make you get rid of one of your highest cards in your tableau or your highest seed card because those are straight points, the seeds from the top, which is on top of the perch. So it's funny because sometimes you can play a card and grab one of the seeds, and then also when you take that card, depending on the number that's added up on the perch, you might have to go again, because if it's lower than what the bird is like adding up to, all the birds, it's kind of a very hard game to explain over this.
Okay, yeah.
It's really, really interesting because it's very thinky. You can go back and forth, and you can almost force by the cards. You can see the other player that they're going to have to take one of those critters, most likely, with the cards that they can possibly play. But you do want to get the lovebirds, and then you also see if there's one sitting there and they need it. You're going to just maybe hate draft and take that card even if you don't need it. But yeah, it's a really neat game. It has a little solo version too that's really neat that I like to play. But yeah, it's kind of a non-talked about game. You don't hear too much about this one, but it's really neat.
No, I don't think I've ever heard of it.
Yeah.
It sounds interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
And what's
that was
your
your
two?
Number 3.
That was my 3.
Perfect. Yeah, my number 2 is Love Letter. 2012. It was designed by, and I don't know how to pronounce that name, so Seiji Kanei, and it was published by AEG Games. And Love Letter is such a simple, it's 16 cards. That's it. 16 cards. And it's such a simple play. You draw a card and you play a card. And you draw a card and you play a card. So you start with one card and you'll draw a second one and you decide whether to play one or the other, and then you hold one in your hand. And you're trying to either be the last man standing or to have the highest card at the end of the round. And each card will do different things. So if you have the guard, it allows you to try to guess somebody else's card. And if you guess correctly, they're eliminated from the game. Now, the first time I played this game, I thought it was terrible because my brother kept guessing what my card was before I even got to play. So I played 3 rounds and then I didn't get to play at all. I was like, this game is like, what's with this game? Like, this isn't fun. But actually, and it's so neat. Then if you play and you have the priest, it allows you to look at another person's card, and you can, like, so you have all these different ones that you have. Now, if you have the countess and you draw a king or you draw the prince, then you have to discard that one. Even though the countess is worth 8 points, you can't keep her in your hand if you drew one of the other ones. And then you have the princess, which is the highest valued card. And with her, if you ever discard her as a card, you automatically eliminate it. So you can't discard the princess. You want to, and sometimes if you have like a card that like makes you switch card, like, so it's so neat. You're kind of, the cards are shifting. You don't know what everybody else has. Maybe you do, or it's like, you just threw out the countess. I think you have the princess and you kept her because she was higher, or you got the prince and the king. So it's so neat, like the secret role that everybody has, and trying to be, make it to the last round if you can, or eliminate everybody else, or have the higher card. It's such a fun game. This is probably, out of my list, my most played game.
Oh wow, I've never played this game. I know.
Oh my god, how did you not play Love Letter?
I have the game, but
what?
And I've had it forever, but my dog chewed the cards, my dog at the time.
Oh no.
So, I mean, you can't, obviously you'll know this one because it has this big. So I've never played it. I would love to. Have you played it at multiple player counts?
Yeah, you know what? I enjoy it at 2. I enjoy it at 3. I enjoy it at 4. I have played it 5, even though it says to play it at 1 to 4. I've played it at 5 and it worked fine, and I enjoy it then too. This is just one that I really like it. And then they've got different version that, like, I've played the Munchkin letter one. I actually just bought the Lovecraft letter and I haven't played that one, and it kind of adds more variation of player powers and different things that you can do, and I think you go insane or you don't go insane. But I haven't played that version yet. And Love Letter is such a simple, pure draw a card, play a card. Like, it is simple, but it's so good. It's so good. It's perfect in its simplicity.
I didn't even know you could play it with 2 people.
Oh, I do. All the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to get a new copy. Try it out.
Yes.
So that was your number 2. My number 2
that was my number 2.
Yep. Mine is called In Totten by Reiner Knizia. It's also called Battle Line. It's the exact same game, just kind of different art, different version. Mine has little kill or be killed. So I think it's little Scottish creatures in the art. It's really neat. But so what it is, there's a row in front of you that you're going to try. I think is there 8? No, there's 9, I think. So 9 little cards in front of you, and you're going to try and win that, like, row or that wall, I guess it would be. And so it's a 2-player game. You're going to go back and forth, and you're going to play like poker-like hands. So you're going to try and have, like, a run. And if you have, like, say, a run of 7, 8, 9, that would be the highest. But if you have a color run, so all the same color, that's, like, the highest thing you could get. And you'll know you've won that side. And so what you're trying to do is win 5 areas or 3 adjacent areas. If you've won 3 adjacent, you've won the game. So you're just kind of going back and forth, playing a card on one, and then you can jump around anywhere you want on your side. But once you know or can prove you that you've won at one of the areas, then you can flip the tile onto your side. It's a really neat back and forth game. This version, I'm not sure if Battleline has it, but it also has some little player powers that you can put in the cards, or like jokers that they can be used as anything you can add in later on for some variation. But it's a really neat back and forth game that you can play with just one other person.
Yeah, In Totten is so great. I actually played it that one time only with you.
Yeah, I brought it.
And it
That's
is
right.
great. And then yeah, and then the artwork is so whimsical
Yeah,
and
it is.
colorful. It's great. I've actually, since I played that game with you, I bought Battle Line,
Oh, did
and
you?
it definitely has that beige, dry
Yeah.
look to it. But yeah, it plays the exact same. It is great. You do have those power cards
Oh,
that
you
kind of
do?
allows you to do different things.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's such a great kind of tug of war type almost.
It
Like it
is.
just,
This
yeah.
one, the cover is like a chicken with like the little Scottish tam hat on top. Like
Yeah,
it's such cute art.
it looks great for
Yeah.
sure. Perfect. So that was your number 2.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So it's time for number 1.
Yeah.
Okay, so my number 1 game was printed in 2014. It's designed by Robert Doherty and Darwin Castle, and it was printed by White Wizard Game, and that is Star Realms. Star Realms is probably my favorite deck builder of all time. It's definitely my most played. I have 3 versions of Star Realms. The first one that I had, the original Star Realms, is just, I mean, it's a thick deck card, but it's just in a small box with just a card. That's all that it comes with, its cards. And it's so neat because you have your starting hand, and you'll have like these little battleships that'll shoot the other player. This definitely plays best at 2, and it's a 2-player game with a small deck. The Frontiers have added so that you can play up to 4, and you can also play cooperatively against like a monster, or like the big boss monster or whatever if you want.
Neat.
I say monster, but it's sci-fi, right? So
Right.
ship or alien, I guess, whatever. But with this one, it's so neat. Like, so you have your cards, and either you can purchase cards that are in the middle row, so that will get added onto your deck, so you can try to get yourself more powerful, or that you'll shoot your enemy, and everybody starts at 50 hit points. And once you start building your deck, like if you play cards that has similar faction, you can have like one that's like, okay, well, this one attacks by 3, but if you have another blue card, now you can unlock this other thing, and it actually attacks by an extra 2. And it's just a kind of straightforward card battle game, deck building, and it's so neat. And it's funny, I made the boys play this with me one time. They were playing on video games, and I was like, okay, that's enough of that. Let's get off the video games. Come play this quick game before supper, and then I'll make supper. And they're like grumbling the whole time. And then finally come to the table, and we play this game. And then I was like, okay, well, thanks for playing. I'm going to go start making supper. And they stayed, and they played like 3 more rounds. And it's so good. And then this is one that'd be like, Mom, can we take it to school? And, you know, it's an amazing deck builder game, Star Realms. There's also Hero Realms that's plays the exact same way, and it's more like a fantasy theme. And normally you would think I would prefer fantasy. I read a lot of fantasy novels in high school, and I love the fantasy theme. But for some reason, even though it plays exactly the same, I like the sci-fi theme for this game better.
Oh, interesting.
I can't explain why, but it's such a neat game, and this is fun. Yeah, this is one that every time I say, oh, let's play Star Realms, the kids be like, yeah, let's drop what we're doing, we're coming. Like, there's never a battle to try to get this one to the table. Such a great game.
I've never played it. I have it in my cart, in
Yeah,
like the big box version that just came out.
right.
And the reason that I've never bought it is the sci-fi space theme just doesn't usually draw me in. But this one is talked about so much. Everybody raves about this game that I thought, well, maybe I'll try the big box. Now I'm thinking maybe I should, start with the small box and see how it goes. But have you seen what's all in that new big box?
Well, I mean, like, because it adds, and I'm not sure that I've seen the big box one, but I know with Star Realms, like, you have the base one, and it adds one where you kind of get extra factions, like the extra different card colors you can add, and it also, like, the Frontier, like I mentioned, where it adds, like, it's almost different scenarios that you can play, and it changes the gameplay a little bit, and some will be co-op, some will be teams, like, so it changes the game a little bit. But honestly, the base variation, 2-player, just that one deck of card shines. It's so good, just that way as well.
Okay, maybe I'll try it. It sounds good. All right, well, my number one is a game that I don't own. I can't. It's reprinting right now with a new publisher called Oink Games. Anyway, the game
Okay.
is called Scout. So I was taught this game by a mutual friend of ours from Airdrie.
Yeah, I know who
We
you
went,
mean.
yeah, we went there for a game night, and I saw the game there, and I said, "Oh, we have to learn this game." And he said, "Oh, it's such a game." So it's a card shedding game, and it's kind of has a similar vibe to Bonanza, where you can't rearrange your cards. But the interesting thing is, you pick up your hand of cards, and there's numbers on the top. And then there's also numbers on the bottom. So you have to make a decision. Do you want your cards like this? Or you can flip them over to the other side and those will be your numbers. But you can see what your options will be. So once you decide which side you want your cards, then you're going to just play a card and you're basically just trying to get rid of your cards. So if I played a 6 down, then the next player would have to beat that with a higher number, or 2 cards would beat it, or a run of 2 cards, or sorry, two, say like 2 twos would beat 1 6, or even a 1 2 would beat a 6. Now, if they have cards that can't beat anything, say there was like 3 9s out there or something, they can choose to scout. So they can take one of those cards and then they can put it anywhere in their hand. So say they picked up a 9 and had a 7 8 together, they could make it a 7 8 9 for next time they played. And then when you do scout and take one of those cards, you have to give that person one of these scout tokens, which I think is just a point that they get at the end of the round. Mm-hmm. But if you're the first one to lay out all your cards, you get a certain, I think it's a little chip that gives you a couple extra points. And then you just add up the points. And I think it's the first one to, is it 30? Have you played this game?
You know what? I have played it with Michael once. He brought it over, and it is such a neat game.
It is good.
It reminds me a lot of Delt.
Oh, like yeah. I think it's a little bit better version of Delt, just because you can flip them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of adds a little bit more to it. But yeah, it was a neat,
neat one.
I
really like Delt. We played Delt when I was at your place, and I did have it before, but I play it with my family because I thought it kind of took over the version of President. Have you ever played President? Which I was getting so sick of playing, but it's kind of got the same feel where you're trying to get rid of cards, but there's a little bit more strategy, I think, involved. But the one thing nice about that game is you have the cards in front of you that you can pick up as well.
Exactly. Yeah, and then the Scout kind of has that same feel, but it does add a little more to it, right? It was great. I have Delt. I definitely want to add Scout. Yeah. See, that wish list is just getting out of control. I'm running out of room.
Yeah.
Well, so that was our top 9 small card games, and it's neat. Like, so because we had two crossovers.
We had Oh My Goods and Bonanza Duel, right? Well, and yeah, Oh Hanami was actually on my list later on down the road. But.
Right. Yeah. No. So lots of. And then I really like the small card games. They're so easy to get to the table. They're so much fun. I've got lots of small games, right? Like that's a big part of my collection.
Mm-hmm, me too.
And it's just such a great. And then it's really good at a lot of different play accounts, right? Some are great at 2, some are great at 12, some are, so yeah. Sounds good. So next week. Mm-hmm. It's going to be Valentine's Day. So our top 9 games is going to be the top games that we play with our spouse.
Yes.
So not necessarily the best 2-player games, but it's the one that us as a couple play the most of.
Yeah.
So you'll have to
interesting.
Yeah, tune in for that one. I'm kind of curious to see what you guys play. And then I haven't made my list yet, so I'm kind of going to go see which game me and Lee played all the time. It'll be interesting to see which makes the top 9 for that.
Yeah, I almost need to get John's input too. Okay, well, which were your favorite of these? Because I have mine, he has his, but I'll kind of combine them.
I think I'll go and kind of, because I like to track all my games on the BG Stat app. Mm-hmm. So I'll kind of go and see which one is our most played.
Oh, that's a
and
good idea.
maybe go that way. We'll see. But unless the most played is really boring game, then I might change.